Are you having slow playback? Don't worry, I'm here to assist you. Now, Davinci Resolve is an awesome software, but sometimes you might have slow playback. So in our example, we have our clip and I have some graphic elements and 4K footage. Sometimes you might have even high resolution footage, but the issue is I am having a slow playback. As you can see, it's quite cranky. There are different ways we can make this smoother, different ways. We can even combine them, but let's look at them one after the other. The first thing is the proxy mode. So in Davinci Resolve, there is a playback proxy mode. If you go to the menu above, you will see timeline proxy mode, half resolution or quarter resolution. You can decide to choose either of them, but what this does is it will reduce the resolution of your timeline so that it can play smoother. At least now I can see the transition. If you take note, before changing the resolution, I couldn't even see that transition. Don't worry if you change your resolution. Let's say you change it and forget to put it off. It wouldn't affect your render outputs. If your footage is in 4K, you will still render out in 4K. Now that is option 1. Option 2 is to go down to settings and change the resolution manually. This way I can change it from 4K to, let's say, 720. This is another quick way of trying to reduce the resolution of your timeline. This is the same effect as what we saw before with the proxy mode. The only thing is that you're doing it manually and you have options, but before you export, make sure to change it back to your original resolution. For example, in my case, it's 4K, so I have to change it back to 4K when I am about to export. We have even a third option to speed things up called Optimised Media. So we have our 4K footage. Sometimes you might even have higher resolution. You can tell Davinci Resolve to create an optimized version of this footage. So to create a lower resolution version and use that. And then when you're exporting, it will just export the original asset. So because you have a lower resolution, it makes the playback smoother. You can go to settings to choose the resolution that the proxy will use. In this situation, I will advise you to change the resolution from choose automatically to the actual one you want, because it might not choose a lower resolution. So for this example, I will leave it to choose automatically, but then it is saved in the cache location. Now, in case you don't really see a directory there, go to preferences and go to media storage. This is actually where your cache files are saved. So when you create an optimized media file, let's say you want to delete it, you can always go there and delete it. To create an optimized media file, all you need to do is to go to the asset you want to create optimized media for and click generate optimized media. Now this will generate an optimized media format, and if you chose a lower resolution, it will use the lower resolution format on the timeline. Now make sure that used optimized media, if available, is ticked. So that is optimized media. And one thing about optimized media is once they are generated, you can't actually transfer them from project to project. Now that takes us to Proxy Media. Now in Optimized Media, it generates a format that Davinci Resolve can use, a cache format. But we have Proxy Media, which kind of does the same thing. It generates lower versions of the assets depending on what you choose. But in this case, it actually generates files that you can actually reuse. So in this example, we have our assets and I have generated a Proxy Media. You can go to the info and click on Proxy to check if Proxy Media has been generated for an asset. You can see in this situation I have generated a Proxy Media, but it is in 4K. So remember that I said when you're choosing the settings, choose a lower resolution instead of automatic. I can also look for the location of the Proxy Media. And you can see that my Proxy Media is here. It's an actual file. Let's go to settings. Instead of choosing automatically, I can choose a lower resolution. I can go from original to half, quarter, 1/8, 1/16. So in that situation, we will have a lower resolution and Davinci will automatically use that instead of the high-res one in the timeline. Now, let's say you have a proxy and you want to link up, let's say in a new project, you can always go to link proxy and find the proxy that you want to link up. Another option is to just disable the effects. Sometimes I have some effects and I just want to play the clip, man. So what you can do is just to disable the effects and it will skip all the effects and just play the clips. If you don't mind disabling the effects, you can just disable it there. Now another option is render cache. It pre-renders the timeline, the effects, titles and clip so that you can easily have a smooth playback. You have user and smart. User is quite manual, but generally I will advise using the smart option. So when you choose smart, Davinci will look at your timeline and make a decision of where to cache. The red line is above footage that is not yet cached, and the blue line signifies where it has cached. It automatically starts caching by itself. Now that it is cached, let us play. Wow! Can you see how smooth that is? That is smooth, man, because we have the footage pre-rendered. Now let's say we go to user. Let's say I want to, cache this. All I'll do is to click on render cache color. And that's it. So the only thing is I have to manually tell Davinci to cache that. Let's say you have a section in your timeline that you are sure you might not need to edit again. So if you're sure you're not going to edit it again, wouldn't it be nice to kind of like render that portion? Yes, we have something called render in place. You right click and click render in place. In this place, this will actually render a video file and replace the raw, clip on the timeline with that video file. And because it's a video file, we don't have any problem with any playback because we're just running through a video file. So we render it and we're going to save the video file in a location and that's it. It's going to render it. Now, once it is done, you will notice that the name is replaced with what was rendered. And you can see that the whole fusion clip, effects, and the actual clip was rendered. So this is not just, trying to create a proxy of a clip. This is the whole section, including the transition, the effects, and all that. So this is very useful. Let's say I have a timeline of different elements and I just want to render in place this section. That's all right. Of course, you can always decompose in case you want to go back to, let's say, change something, and that's fine. Once you render in place, you can actually check for the original render in the media pool, and it is named a sequential name. So for example, we have render 1, and let's say I want to replace this back. Instead of re-rendering, I can do that, and I replace the compound clip with the rendered clip. Of course, if you render again, you will have another clip. Just to note, when you're about to export, you can actually tell Davinci Resolve to use some of this media. For example, you can tell Davinci to use Optimized Media. Let's say you actually generated a high-res optimized media. You can use this to speed up your outputs, thereby having a faster render time when outputting. So you can use Optimized Media, Proxy Media, and even rendered cache. Go enjoy Davinci.